All right, welcome everybody to episode 204 of the SEO Vault. Today we have Damon Burton with us today. Damon, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
What's up, Victor? I'm good. Looking forward to chatting.
For sure, for sure. So Damon's had a ton of different experience in the SEO industry from a variety of different types of businesses as well. He also puts together some content online. He's got a book that's published. Damon, what's the name of your book?
Outrank.
Outrank, and it is on Amazon. It has, I believe, 5-star reviews, and I think it is probably a great place to kind of check up on what Damon does nowadays. But before we go into all of that, Damon, I want to start and ask you, how did you get started with the SEO industry? Can you give us a little bit of a rundown as to like maybe the first few gigs you might have done?
Yeah, so my background originally started in design. So I had been doing that for a couple of years. And then I had a client that said, "What do you know about Google?" And I said, "I know enough that I can probably help you, but not enough that I feel comfortable charging for it. But I also don't want to work for free. So how about we do
Okay,
this?"
yeah.
And we worked out a deal where I said, let's establish these goals. And once we hit these goals, then you pay me retroactively and we start a retainer. So that created an opportunity for them where they didn't have anything to lose, but then I was also incentivized to not work for free. And I think if I remember right, I mean, this was 17 years ago. So I think it took about 3 months before we hit that. And I enjoyed the process of SEO. And I took it to a second client who knew the first client. And I said, "Hey, I just did this for these other guys. You want to do the same thing?" And they said, "Yeah." And so between those two accounts,
Oh, can I ask
I
what niche was that?
the first one was in automotive retail, and the second one
Nice.
was in electronics manufacturing.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So then after those two, the process was challenging enough, but it was also dynamic and exciting enough that I made a pretty clear decision back then to say, okay, I think this is going to be my thing. And since then, I just stayed in my lane.
Awesome. So, can you give us I guess, a rundown of what really took you from that point, starting out as kind of like a freelancer, and where you are today?
Yeah, good question. So, I often refer to it as dating the phases. And so what I mean by that is I just kind of enjoyed and dated, metaphorically each of the phases of evolution of entrepreneurship. So in the beginning, it was just cool to be self-employed. So for a year or two, I just did that. It was nice to have flexibility. At the time, my wife, she was working in a hospital, and so she'd have really early mornings, and so like I could match her schedule. And then after a couple years, I said, I probably have something here that I should take advantage of. And it wasn't that I was neglecting it, I just wasn't maximizing it. And so then about years 2 or 3, I said I should start bringing in team members. And then it was about years 4 or 5. I was listening to two books around the same time. One was E-Myth Revisited, and the other was 4 Hour Workweek. So if you're not familiar with those, E-Myth Revisited teaches you how to build a business that's dependent on processes, not people. And then 4 Hour Workweek tells you how to basically compress time. And
Yeah.
so it was unique to listen to those two around the same time because it painted a broader picture for me than one of the books alone, where it was like, okay, here's how you build a scalable business, but then here's how you accelerate it too. So if you listen to them, I would recommend listening to eMyth first because you
Okay.
don't want to cut corners and compress time until you know what your processes are and what's at stake.
I
So
know a
after
lot of
that,
people that mess that up.
yeah. So after that, I brought in more team members. Then I went, I had 4 team members. Then I went to 8, and then I went from 8 to 15. And then, interestingly enough, during COVID, we were very fortunate to be on the beneficial side of things, and we went from 15 to 50. So that's kind
Nice.
of the evolution of the scale of the business.
So, okay, so I was looking through your website and you have some really awesome achievements there. So, I guess the big one that I saw was I guess I want to hear the story about it. It looks like you were able to outrank a $1 billion business. It looks like maybe
Mm.
you outranked their branded queries, I think. Can you tell me
hmm
about that?
Yeah, so this was fun. This was right before I actually started the agency. So my wife she still does. She watches The Bachelor. So it's an ABC show. It's a romantic kind of whatever. Everybody's familiar with Bachelor. So
I've seen it, yeah.
so the she would kind of bring me in at the end for these season finales, and if I remember right, it was 2006, and she said, "Hey, come watch the season finale with me." And what I had remembered in the season finales before is they would leave a cliffhanger. So it'd be end of the season, come back in a couple weeks, we'll tell you who the new guy is. And this
Mm.
time they said, come back after the commercial and we'll tell you who the new guy is. And so I thought that was interesting. And I knew it was intentional, but I didn't know why. And so they got my interest from a marketing perspective. And so I stayed and watched and they announced this new Bachelor guy. So then I got thinking, well, there's more to this from a business and marketing perspective, and I'm curious what it is. So I started Googling the gentleman's name, and I could find surprisingly little information about him. And so here I am, somebody that doesn't watch The Bachelor, that knows how to navigate search engines and can't find anything. So then I got
Mm.
thinking, well, if I'm not a diehard fan and there's countless other people out there and I know how to navigate this and the majority of them probably won't, that's an opportunity for me to create the solution that's missing. And so what I did is I kind of cataloged any public information I could find about the gentleman and started this unofficial fan site. And so then I threw whatever SEO I knew at the time at it. And within just a couple days, if I remember right, it was on page one. And then by the end of the month, it was number one. So I outranked ABC, $1 billion entity for their Bachelor brand. So that was really fun
Nice.
because it created an opportunity. It really kind of visualized for me the potential of SEO.
Yeah,
And from
like
there,
what you could really do. You said that was before you actually started your agency?
yeah, it was a year or two before I formally started the agency. Yeah, but it created that picture where then I realized I could do these amazing things, and so I went on to do similar things for, a couple other branded searches for things that I was passionate about. There was another one. I used to be big into cars, and there's this huge convention in Las Vegas called SEMA Show,
Oh, yeah.
and and so I went out there the first year I had attended. If you haven't been there, it's just millions of square feet of amazing cars, modifications, upcoming concept cars, everything you could think of. And it was so fascinating to me. So very similarly, I came home and I wanted to find more about it, and I could find very little. I could find a couple sites here and a couple sites there, but low on content, low on pictures. And so I kind of cataloged what I could, and then I had maybe 80 pictures, less than 100 pictures when I went. And so I started a website about it. And so then the next year, I took a ton of pictures. I took a couple thousand. And then by the end of that second year, I was outranking SEMA Show for their own branded queries. That one ended up in a cease and desist letter from their lawyer.
Did it help you at all though? Like, were they upset and didn't even work with you? Because like at a much smaller scale, I've done something like that where the moment I outranked the given business, they were like, okay, let's
Mhm.
hire you. Did that how did that
No,
play out?
no, they were very kind. They sent me a letter, and then a gentleman called me, and I looked up who he was after. He was their attorney, and if I remember right, I saw his profile on LinkedIn, and I think he was like a former FTC lawyer, and so
Mm,
I didn't need the site that bad, and
yeah.
so I played along and let that site die.
Oh man, they made you close it down. I would have
Yeah,
thought they maybe wanted to buy it off of you or something nicer, but
no, they just
I,
wanted it gone.
I mean, I'm sure. Did you document it well and everything? Because I mean, that's one of those stories that, like you said, there's not that many people that kind of dig really deep to even find these, I guess, niches. Because I'm already thinking like, there's all these people that want to build some type of lead generation properties, affiliate websites. And it's kind of, I guess, the most ideal way to do it, right? Something that you really
Hmm.
love. You said you like cars. You even took all the pictures yourself,
Hmm.
and you were kind of digging through and realized that industry, I guess they're just not spending money on SEO like that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the reason why those sites worked is because they solved the problem. And
mhm.
so it's the same concept of why SEO is effective today is you either create a user experience, content, or a product that solves a problem. So it was just, you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity if you just look at it and go, what's the gap in between the other sites? There's probably indirect competitors, but there's probably something in between that could be your opportunity.
Yeah, and it's so far away from the typical like, oh, just call up all the plumbers, just call up these, try to typical niches. So that's really cool
Hmm.
to hear that though. Not a lot of people, not a lot of people do crazy little endeavors like that. So it's really awesome to be able to share the fact that you have a little bit of more of attention for SEO. But I guess that takes me to the other stuff that I came across your brand. I see that you're big on kind of teaching the right way of SEO. I know that you sent in a bunch of details regarding like content. So I'm wondering what kind of insight or tidbits you might have for us regarding content, or maybe the way that you do SEO that's different given your experiences now.
Yeah, I think the value proposition or the differentiator between how my team does SEO is attention to detail. There's a lot of different ways you can do SEO, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. I think where a lot of people miss an opportunity is they get distracted by shiny objects and they hear some sort of buzz or gossip or there's a new algorithm, and so everybody changes everything. And I've found a lot of peace of mind and success in the opposite approach, where it's slow and steady, stick to what consistently works.
Oh
And
yeah.
so anytime there's a new algorithm, there's like little to no impact on my clients. So if anything, most of the time there's a positive impact.
Right.
Worst case scenario, they're neutral. So in the 17 years, I've never had a client get a penalty. And there's probably ways that you can rank quicker than our approach, but it's probably not as sustainable. So
Right.
the what we focus on is quality content. And so like when we launch an account, there's two cycles that kind of start at the beginning. So I have my development team go through and do standard structural audits, page speed improvements, mobile friendliness, call to action, user experience, things like that. And then while that's going on, we go really deep into data. And where a lot of SEOs miss is they know that content is important, but they just SEO content, right? They're like with air quotes over here, where it's just they write content just to write content instead of being intentional about it. And so this kind of ties into what we were just talking about, where we solve a problem and you write content to address a specific audience's pain points. And too many other SEOs just write content that is wrapped around a keyword. But what is the piece of content you're writing doing? How is it communicating that you're an expert in the industry? And how is it solving a problem of a listener or an audience or an ideal buyer instead of just bringing them into the page? And then they look at it and they're like, well, cool, I guess. But it doesn't resonate with them and it doesn't hold their hand to buy your thing. And so we go really heavy and we're like 6 to 8 weeks in on a new account before we start writing the content because we're laying the foundation to go, here's where all the money is long term, and here's the ideal buyer, and here's the pain points we can solve, very specific to that audience.
I love that. So I think the key thing that I'm taking away from that, you said, oh man, I already forgot the. Oh, sorry. Not delivering value, bringing a solution. Sorry. How did you explain it?
Uh,
Um,
Not writing just to write. A lot of times the SEOs just write content because they come up with a list of keywords and they just write a bunch of garbage about.
solve the problem. Sorry, that's what it was. So same thing that you said, even just outranking those other brands, focusing on solving the problem. I think that's a huge differentiator when you think about quality, because I guess that's a tough thing to really nail down what quality really means. But I think when you kind of lead it by what you said, solving a problem, it starts to make a lot of sense as far as, well, you can use tools that will tell you optimize like this or write this topic. But I guess my opinion, kind of coming from what you're saying also, I feel like, well, yeah, the SEO tools can give you a whole bunch, but at the end of the day, are they solving a problem? Because if you think of it like that, maybe you can find like new topics. I'm guessing stuff that
Mhm.
other people aren't covering that can get traffic that you're not going to find from a competitor analysis, which is awesome to hear, because I guess that's kind of like the above and beyond, I think, as far as content quality, which a lot of times is based off of like topic selection, I think, in the first place. Where, yeah, a lot of people, they stick to the analytical nature of SEO, but then they forget about the creative aspect or the problem solving aspect of things. Okay, so what do you think? So I have this question. I'm wondering, what is your opinion? How much should SEO writers be paid? Because this is a big
Mm.
challenge for me. Seeing certain agencies, they'll pay a certain amount, and then other agencies, they might pay much more. And there's a lot of difference in responsibilities that are given to the writers. But I'm curious to hear what your opinion is on something that maybe is like a sweet spot or some ballpark range for
Mm.
2023? Because obviously things have been changing as Google provides more attention to content, which has kind of prompted this up to really think about it myself.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. No one's asked me this. So there's a lot of different ways you can approach content. And I think the pay obviously varies depending on the skill set, the familiarity with the intent. And so one thing that I found to be useful is to hire copywriters that have no SEO experience. And I'll tell you why. The problem that I run into in hiring copywriters that come from an SEO background is that they're focused on the SEO and the keyword stuffing and keyword density and just all these other things instead of like we just talked about solving the problem. And it's been really refreshing over the years realizing there's a sweet spot in the type of people that we hire that have no experience because they come at it from a consumer's perspective and they come at it from almost like a blank slate going, oh, okay, well, this is what I would want to know about this thing. And so it resonates better. And probably where we can tie this in that's pretty topical is like AI. And so the problem, I'm not going to talk about the benefits of AI because everybody knows that. I'm going to play devil's advocate and give you a couple things to think about on the other side. So we use AI little to none, very intentionally. We'll use it for keyword research. We'll use it for topic ideation. We use it zero for content output.
Okay.
And the reason why is because when you have somebody that manually writes the content, they're aligning it with that buyer intent and solving the problems. And there's a beauty in storytelling. So if you think about all the brands that have survived over the decades, if not the centuries, and you think about these mega brands like, I don't know, Coca-Cola, then they tell stories, right? They're not mass producing content at scale just to produce content. They're very strategic about the content they create. And so when you come at content and tell a story, that's where you build brand loyalty, and those are the businesses that thrive. So now depending on how much you integrate AI and how much your experience is and this and that, like you're probably going to have SEO copywriters that charge more and are less effective at resonating with the client than somebody that doesn't have any direct SEO experience.
Hmm.
So, if your goal is to just mass produce content, then you could probably pay somebody piece rate, and they're probably just going to use a ton of AI, and you can probably pay them just a couple bucks per piece. Um, my team comes in somewhere in mid 20s and then goes up to 50, and we pay them hourly. And the reason why we pay them
Really?
hourly, yeah, the reason why we pay them hourly and the other side has enjoyed hourly instead of piece rate. Piece rate they'll probably run into is revisions. And so they're like, okay, well, I produced a piece of content, but then they have to redo it however many times or throw it away entirely and they don't get paid anything. The other problem is I want to pay them for the time they spend researching. And so a lot of times they're spending more time researching than they are actually copywriting. So they're
Mm.
not getting compensated for all that time spent there if they're getting piece rate or the same problem with per word. And there's nothing wrong with those other pay scales. It just depends on what the right mutual relationship is.
Yeah, it sounds like that's the realistic way to get what you actually want out of the pages at the end of the day.
Yeah, because like if we get, if we get a piece of content and we want some revisions, then they're happy to make the revisions. I think most people are happy to make revisions at least once or twice, but what happens if you have to make it three or four times and you gather more feedback and you got to make more revisions? And so w we found that approach to be more beneficial.
That's really interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I hope that, the viewers are getting a lot from that because I guess too often I see, and you talked about the hourly, which is another huge thing, but too often I just see people like paying so little where, yeah, they have to rely on the AI way too much. I
Hmm.
agree with the topic ideation, the getting past the creativity block, all that stuff that these AI language models are awesome for. But also having a process in place that allows for research because you're not going to get everything from there, and you're not even going to get everything from SEO tools. I'm
Hmm.
already thinking like what you're saying, with the Coca-Cola brand. Not everybody, like, competitor parity is a huge thing, sure, but not everybody is actually putting good content out there. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting that you have a process that tries to incorporate all of this as far as what it looks like realistically. Um, I was thinking of no, yeah, okay. So you also said another thing that was really important there. You were talking about how you rather start with a writer from the beginning. I'm actually, I
Hmm.
agree with that a lot because I feel like it's simple and straightforward to come up with like a training process, whether you train them yourself or whether you have a really built out course or something. I feel like it's easier to take people through that journey than to, I guess, what debrief them or almost like remove the
You
stuff
have
that
to
they learn from other agencies before finally then going into training that might have to be custom for them because of where they came from. So yeah, logistically, I think that's something really interesting that a lot of people should think about before just kind of going crazy and hiring anybody. Because yeah, the agency could definitely look very different depending on which side you go off of.
Yeah, you have to break so many bad habits because you're not hiring a copywriter, you're hiring somebody that's been trained with somebody else's habits.
That reminds me of all the way back in when I was in high school. I was big into marching band, and I would hear the band director say the same thing. It's like, you know what? Give me the guy that doesn't know anything. I'll teach him
Mm.
how to be an expert. Don't give me the guy that comes through and doesn't have good uh I don't know how much you know about
Whatever the
industries.
posture is,
Yeah,
yeah.
the exactly. But that, yeah, that's really interesting to hear that. Okay, so I want to go back over to your book now because I know it's something you worked hard on. I've been trying to put out a book for the last like I don't know 3 years, but it's just it gets pushed back and back and back. I'm wondering
Yeah.
what was your process for building that book, and can you tell us a little bit more about that? About what what's in it?
Yeah, writing a book sucks. We'll just put it out there. At least your first book. Yeah, I'll walk you through the process. So the book's called Outrank. It's if you have the time more than the money and you want to learn SEO, whether for yourself, to start your own agency, to start freelancing, to optimize your own website, it's an entire blueprint. So I basically reverse engineered our processes at my team and then created it in a readable format. Like if you read the first sentence of the book, it says, "Let's be honest, a book about SEO doesn't sound like the sexiest topic." So I had to figure out a way to blend the tactical of SEO with storytelling. And so it became a readable piece of content. And so in it, I talk about The Bachelor and I talk about the SEMA show and all those things.
Hmm.
And so it starts through a process where it illustrates the power of SEO through real examples of story. And so it catches your attention and then it transitions into the tactical stuff. So whether you're, if you're advanced, then it's enjoyable to start with because it starts with stories and then transitions into things that you know. If you don't know anything about it, then same thing. It starts with the stories and educates you on what the meanings of certain things are. So by the time it gets to the tactical, then you know enough that you can leverage it. As far as writing, the I was probably in a similar position that you're in, where I had wanted to write a book for long enough that I finally got to the point where I said, just write the damn book or stop thinking about it. And so I finally sat down and started writing the book. And the evolution of it was I probably wrote for, if I remember right, it was something like 6 months, off and on here and there. And then I got burned out for a little while, so I took a break for a couple months. And then what took more time than writing was editing. And
Oh,
so
really?
yeah, so now I mean my book's 130 something pages long, and so when you're done with a book, now you got 130 something pages to read. And so
That's
then
what I'm getting now just with video creation making case studies. It's like sometimes the editing, the redacting can take some serious
oh
time.
yeah, for sure on a video. I mean a 10-minute video takes 2 hours. So I mean so then you have your book here and it's however many pages long, and the way, at least for me, you edit is you read the whole book and then you go, oh, well, this, I got to move these paragraphs around because this paragraph, paragraph or chapter, chapter 8 would be better as chapter 3. So you start shuffling around paragraphs and then you go from paragraphs down to pages, chapters down to pages, pages down to paragraphs, paragraphs down to sentences, sentences down to words.
Mm,
And so
okay, okay.
each of those cycles, you're rereading the whole book again to make sure everything flows
Yeah.
seamlessly. But what's been really rewarding is when I wrote it, I didn't want to write a book half-ass, and I wanted it to be something I could be proud of and be like, I didn't write this just to say I wrote a book, even though I know I just cut a bunch of corners. And so now that it's been out for a while, it's been really rewarding the feedback I get where people recognize that.
Hmm.
You'll get messages that say, this is one of the easiest books to read. This is something that you put a lot of detail in. This is, people notice those things and then they'll start to acknowledge it as it sticks around for a while.
That's awesome. Yeah, I thanks for that advice there. Definitely valuable for anybody else trying to make a book also as far as the strategy there because that makes a lot of sense as far as getting you through everything and being able to really get a good structure together. So if I yeah, so I'll probably reach out to you if I write my book whenever that is, because I'd want to hear I guess your opinions on it because I'm not the best storyteller. So let's see what I'll come up with. But
It depends on who your audience is. If you want to write it to SEOs, my target audience wasn't existing SEOs. It was
mhm.
small business owners or people that want to qualify agencies. And
Okay,
so
okay.
if your audience is other SEOs, you don't have to tell stories because they will probably want to get direct to the tactical.
Okay. Lots for me to think about. Hopefully that's also helping other people because I know that's a great way to also kind of show everybody, like you said, you went through your beginnings, your the middle and how you ultimately built your agency throughout that whole book. So it's probably something, like you said, you can be very proud of at the end of the day. Okay, so we're coming up close here to the end of the episode. I just want to really quickly get through some Web 20 ranker tidbits before we wrap things up, though. So anybody that's watching, we are putting out different blog posts every week on the Web 20 Ranker site. The last big update to the Web 20 Ranker site was that SEO pricing calculator. There's also some updates as far as SEO Mad Scientist. Now, I don't have the full details out yet because that's going to be actually placed on the website once everything is ready. But there are the CTR manipulation tests that has finally concluded. So if you want to get Lasha's final thoughts as to what we learned from that test, definitely check that out. It's really interesting as far as what moves and what it doesn't do, I guess, at the end of the day. But check those out. Another thing that I would say is check out the local SEO course 3.0. I have some feedback from the past few weeks, so I'm going to be able to update that for all you guys that have been checking out and sending in your comments. Thank you so much. Also in 2 weeks, Labor Day comes around, I believe. So, what does that mean? We are doing a sale. So, if anybody is looking out for the next Web 20 Ranker sale, that is coming up in the next few weeks. So, be sure to follow the Web 20 Ranker Facebook page to know as soon as that happens. Also, if you're not in the local client takeover group, that's the other place where we're posting updates. Okay, that's enough for Web 20 Ranker brand. Now, Damon, I want to bring it back to what do you think everybody should or did you say you had an offer for the listeners of this podcast?
Yeah, if you want to go to freeseobook.com, you can get a copy of Outrank that we talked about. Free PDF,
Nice.
no pitch, no upsell, nothing. Just on the thank you page. They'll invite you to an upcoming Facebook group, but totally free.
That's awesome. And what was that website again? The URL?
Freeseobook.com.
freeseobook.com. So we're going to put that in the description and comments as well, but definitely check that out if you want to learn more from Damon. Definitely a very impressive history there and a lot of years behind you as far as SEO marketing. Okay, last thing. What out of all of your experience, is there anything else you can throw at people as far as what to watch out for? Whether it's something, algorithmic updates, or something, I guess, a final takeaway as far as content moving forward past 2023.
Yeah, figure out what's sustainable and as close to evergreen as possible. I think in the world of SEO, you probably can't have everything evergreen forever, but you can have basic concepts pretty evergreen. And the value in that is you are able to maintain quality control at scale. The other value is you don't have to get caught up in what all the other SEOs are saying. I think one of the most valuable things I've ever done is stop listening to the industry
Yeah.
because what happens is you end up hearing something that somebody else heard from somebody else that they heard from somebody else. Whether any of it is true You don't know whether any of it's effective. You don't know, but just because 20 people are talking about it, you think it's effective. And so then that's also the thing that we get caught up in where, marketers like to abuse things. And so once all of us start hammering the same strategy, that's when Google goes in and says, all right, well, that doesn't count anymore. So there's a lot of value in figuring out what your own path is, because then you don't have to worry about what other people are talking about, and you can kind of beat your own drum and build out your own scalable processes.
That's very true. So building out your processes, having, I guess at the end of the day, something that really provides value to kind of guide you to have a principled approach so that, like you said, you can kind of ignore the shiny objects.
Hmm.
So thank you so much, Damon, for joining us today. Again, make sure everybody to follow us on YouTube, local or the SEO Vault on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And thank you to all of you guys that are liking and leaving us comments. Again, check out Damon and his book. Thank you again for the free offer. That'll be it for this week. We will catch you guys on the next one. See ya.